Everyone believed a Japanese stranger was behind the village's serial murders and deadly curse. The film is set in a quiet small village in South Korea. One morning, while heavy rain is pouring down, a police officer named Jong-gu receives a call to investigate a murder case. However, before leaving, his mother-in-law insists that he eat breakfast first. Jong-gu agrees and finishes his meal before heading out. At home, he lives with his wife, Mina, his mother-in-law, Jenny, and their young daughter, Hyo-jin. After dropping Hyo-jin off at school, Jong-gu finally heads to the crime scene. When he arrives, several officers are already there. His attention is immediately drawn to a man covered in blood. The man is still alive, but he sits motionless with a blank stare as if he is under the influence of something. The initial investigation reveals that he brutally murdered a farmer and his wife. Strangely, although the victims' bodies were found there, it is obvious that they were actually killed somewhere else before being moved to the location. Jong-gu's colleagues suspect the killer was poisoned after eating wild mushrooms. However, his behavior and condition seem far too strange to be explained by something that simple. Shortly afterward, they travel to the actual murder scene, which is a warehouse covered in bloodstains. While examining the area, Jong-gu notices a withered flower hanging from a wooden post that resembles a human skull. As he continues searching another room, he discovers iron bowls and trays, bird nests, and several candles that are still burning. At the same time, on a mountain not far from the village, a hunter successfully catches a deer with one of his traps. But as he prepares to carry his catch home, he slips and falls a considerable distance, knocking himself unconscious. When he regains consciousness, he is horrified to see a mysterious man eating the deer he had just caught. Terrified, the hunter immediately hides behind a rock. However, when he cautiously peeks out again, the man has vanished without a trace. A few seconds later, the stranger suddenly appears right in front of him with glowing red eyes. As frightening as the story sounds, it turns out to be nothing more than a tale being discussed by Jong-gu and his partner, Sung-bak, while they are working the night shift at the police station. The hunter is actually a friend of theirs. According to rumors circulating around the village, the man the hunter saw is a Japanese resident who lives alone in the mountains. His arrival has sparked countless rumors because strange incidents have become increasingly common ever since he moved there. Even so, everything remains nothing more than gossip, and there is still no real evidence connecting him to any of the events. Their conversation eventually returns to the murder case they are investigating. The autopsy report concludes that the killer suffered some kind of breakdown after consuming poisonous mushrooms. However, Sung-bak refuses to believe that explanation. In his opinion, there is no way eating mushrooms could transform someone into such a bizarre and violent person. He begins to suspect that the incidents may somehow be connected to the Japanese man living in the mountains. Not long afterward, the power at the police station suddenly goes out. As Sung-bak prepares to check the source of the problem, Jong-gu suddenly panics after noticing something outside the building. When they both look in the same direction, they see a naked woman standing in the darkness. Sung-bak gathers his courage and steps outside to investigate, but by the time he reaches the spot, the woman has disappeared without a trace. The following morning, Jong-gu wakes up from a nightmare that reminds him of what happened the previous night. He keeps the experience to himself and tries to go about his day as usual. Since it is his day off, he takes Hyo-jin shopping and buys her several toys and hair clips.
봐봐. 처음 본 것도 아니야.
However, later that night, Jong-gu receives another emergency call. A house has caught fire, and he immediately heads to the scene. Unfortunately, by the time he arrives, the building has already been completely consumed by the flames, causing his superior to scold him for being late. Amid the burned remains of the house, the police discover several victims in horrific condition. One of the female survivors suddenly becomes violent and has to be restrained by the officers. The situation grows even more chaotic when another victim being carried on a stretcher suddenly attacks Jong-gu. The woman joins in and attacks him as well, scratching and pulling his hair, although he fortunately avoids any serious injuries. After the situation is finally brought under control, Jong-gu notices the Japanese man who has become the center of so many rumors throughout the village. From this point on, we will refer to him as Sato. After the incident, Jung-gu returns to the police station still shaken by what happened. Not long afterward, Hyo-jin arrives with a change of clothes for her father. However, Jung-gu remains deeply disturbed and does not even touch the food sitting in front of him. After Hyo-jin leaves, he continues thinking about the woman involved in the fire incident. The more he remembers her face, the more familiar she seems. Eventually, he realizes that she is the same naked woman he and Sung-bak saw during the blackout at the police station. Sung-bak remembers the same thing, but when they try to tell their superior about it, no one believes their story. The following day, a man riding a motorcycle suddenly panics after discovering a woman who has died by hanging herself. The woman turns out to be the same fire victim who previously attacked Jung-gu. Not long afterward, Jung-gu arrives at the scene to investigate. A detective reveals a disturbing new detail. During the previous fire incident, 3 victims were found dead not because of the fire itself, but because they had been stabbed beforehand. Even more shocking, the primary suspect in the case is the same woman who has just committed suicide. Jung-gu becomes increasingly confused as one horrifying event follows another in rapid succession. The village has always been known as a peaceful place where serious crimes rarely happen. Later that afternoon, Jung-gu visits a restaurant owned by a friend who had asked to meet him. There, his friend tells him about a rumor spreading throughout the village. According to the rumor, Sato once raped a woman, and that woman was the same person who had just been found dead. After the incident, she reportedly began acting strangely. She often wandered around at night without any clothes on and seemed to have completely lost her sanity. The explanation immediately reminds Jung-gu of the mysterious naked woman he and Sung-bak saw during the blackout at the police station. His friend also claims to have seen her in person, and at that time, almost her entire body was covered in horrifying pus-filled skin infections. Not long afterward, Jung-gu and Sung-bak are assigned to guard the burned house, which has now officially become an active crime scene. Jung-gu tells Sung-bak everything he has just learned. The more information they uncover, the harder it becomes for Jung-gu to dismiss Sung-bak's theory that Sato is somehow connected to the strange incidents occurring throughout the village. It is then that they notice a mysterious woman not far from the scene. Since her name is never mentioned, we will refer to her as Shiro. The woman keeps throwing small stones at them, but because she does not seem dangerous, they choose to ignore her. With little else to do, Jung-gu asks Sung-bak to visit a dermatologist and obtain the medical records of the suicide victim. He wants to know whether the severe skin disease she suffered from has any connection to the murders taking place. After Sung-bak leaves, Jung-gu is left alone guarding the burned house. Not long afterward, Shiro approaches him again while continuing to throw stones, which quickly irritates him. He tries questioning her, including asking where she lives, but Shiro refuses to answer. Instead, she claims that the woman who committed suicide was actually the person who murdered everyone inside the house during the fire incident. Naturally, Jung-gu demands proof. Shiro then leads him inside the house and shows him a room that she claims was the actual murder scene. She insists that she witnessed everything with her own eyes and was present during the killings. According to Shiro, one of the victims even claimed that Sato was a demon. Since Jung-gu has already been suspicious of the Japanese man for some time, he does not immediately dismiss the accusation. When Jung-gu mentions that he has encountered Sato several times before, Shiro warns him that the more often he sees Sato, the more likely it is that Sato is targeting him. In the middle of their conversation, Jung-gu receives a phone call from Sung-bak. He immediately tells Sung-bak to return because he has found a potential witness. However, when Jung-gu goes back inside the house to show him where Shiro is, she has mysteriously vanished without a trace. Jung-gu searches around the area, but instead hears a strange sound coming from outside the house. When he investigates, he sees Sato eating a deer. As Sato slowly begins walking toward him, Jung-gu panics and runs for his life. After tripping and believing Sato is about to catch him, he suddenly wakes up. Everything he just experienced was only a nightmare. Jung-gu becomes increasingly disturbed because his dreams have recently grown stranger and more terrifying. That same morning, he also learns that Hyo-jin did not go to school because she is running a fever.
너는 병원 안 데리고 가. 그래서 뭐 하고 자빠졌냐? 어휴.
Afterward, Jung-gu heads to work but arrives late, earning another scolding from his superior. It is not only because he is late, but also because he previously claimed to have found an eyewitness who later disappeared without a trace. During some downtime, Jung-gu and Sung-bak sit inside their car reading a newspaper. The article suggests that all of the recent murders may have been caused by poisonous mushrooms. However, neither of them believes that explanation. Jung-gu then remembers the hunter's story about encountering Sato on the mountain. Curious to learn more, they decide to visit the hunter themselves. When they meet him, the hunter insists that everything he said is true and not a fabrication or a dream. He even shows them the stitches on his head as proof of the accident he suffered during the incident. When asked for further evidence, the hunter opens his refrigerator and shows them that it is completely empty. He explains that since encountering the mysterious figure, he has been too terrified to hunt again. As a result, his business has slowly collapsed and his shop is on the verge of bankruptcy. Even now, he remembers Sato's appearance vividly. According to him, Sato looked more like a wild animal than a human being. Simply recalling the experience is enough to make him shiver with fear. Although Sungbok remains skeptical, Jong-gu becomes even more determined to meet Sato in person. Since the hunter does not know the exact location of Sato's home, he can only guide them to the last place where he saw the Japanese man. The location lies deep within the mountains and cannot be reached by vehicle, forcing them to continue on foot. After a long and exhausting journey, they finally arrive at the site. There, they find the remains of the deer the hunter had previously mentioned, along with some of his belongings that were left behind. What puzzles them is that most of the deer's body remains untouched. If it had truly been attacked by a wild animal, far less of it should have been left behind. While they are examining the area, the weather suddenly changes and heavy rain begins to pour down. The hunter wants to leave immediately, but Jong-gu is still curious about Sato's home. The hunter eventually points toward an old house located even deeper within the mountains. Jong-gu asks the hunter to take them there, but he refuses. Moments later, the hunter slips and falls from a height once again. Although he remains conscious and does not suffer any fatal injuries, his bad luck continues when lightning suddenly strikes him. His condition rapidly deteriorates, forcing Jong-gu to rush him to the hospital. Despite being in critical condition, the hunter manages to survive. Jong-gu feels deeply guilty about what happened. However, in the middle of his concern, a commotion suddenly breaks out in another room. When he investigates the disturbance, he sees a patient suffering violent convulsions. To his shock, the man turns out to be the murderer from the beginning of the film, who has somehow remained alive until now. Doctors and nurses desperately try to calm him down, but the convulsions continue until he eventually dies. After leaving the hospital, Jong-gu and Sungbok do not immediately go home. Instead, they stop by a restaurant for a while. The more strange events they experience, the more confused they become about what is really happening in the village. They eventually agree to return to the mountain the next day and search for Sato themselves. While at the restaurant, they notice a woman drinking with several men. On her neck is a severe skin infection that looks remarkably similar to those seen on the previous murderers. However, because they still have no proof that the skin disease is connected to the murders, they decide to ignore it for the time being. Later that night, Jong-gu finally returns home. Not long after arriving, he hears Hyo-jin screaming in fear from her room. When he rushes in to check on her, he discovers that she has just awakened from a nightmare. Terrified, Hyo-jin tells him that she dreamed about someone continuously knocking on the front door and trying to get inside the house. The following morning, Jong-gu looks for Hyo-jin and finds her eating breakfast as usual. However, something immediately catches the attention of everyone in the family. Hyo-jin is eagerly eating large amounts of fish, even though she has always hated it. Jong-gu, Mina, and Jenny exchange confused glances, unable to understand the sudden change in her behavior. Feeling that something is seriously wrong, Jenny pulls Jong-gu aside for a private conversation. Besides Hyo-jin's strange behavior, Jenny is also worried about the nightmares her granddaughter has been having lately. Her concern has grown so much that she has already asked a neighbor to help find a shaman.
옆집 할매한테 자네가 자고 있는 얘기 내가 다 들었어.
술 다 먹어보고.
Meanwhile, Jong-gu meets up with Sungbok again to continue investigating Sato. This time, Sungbok does not come alone. He brings his nephew Yi-sam, a church deacon who lived in Japan for several years. Since Yi-sam speaks Japanese fluently, they hope he can help communicate with Sato. Ever since the strange incidents began occurring in the village, Sungbok has also become noticeably more fearful. He is now wearing a cross necklace, something he never used to do. The three of them make their way back up the mountain toward Sato's house. After a long journey, they finally arrive at an old, abandoned-looking house. Although they repeatedly call out Sato's name, no one answers. Curious, they decide to enter and investigate the house themselves. From the various belongings inside, they become increasingly convinced that Sato really does live there. Outside, a vicious dog is chained up in the yard, but fortunately it cannot reach them. While searching the house, Jong-gu notices candlelight coming from a locked room. Suspicious, he forces the door open and steps inside. There he finds offerings, strange symbols, and various ritual objects that strengthen his belief that Sato is involved in something dark and sinister. At the same time, Sung-bak discovers a hidden door leading to a small secret room at the back of the house. When he enters, he is shocked by what he finds. The room contains numerous photographs showing people while they were healthy, then sick, and eventually dead. There are also many personal belongings that appear to have been collected from different individuals. As Sung-bak examines the photographs, he begins recognizing several faces. One of them is the murderer from the beginning of the film. He also finds a photograph of the woman who hanged herself after the fire incident. The more photos he sees, the more convinced he becomes that every victim connected to the strange events in the village somehow has a connection to Sato. Outside the house, Yi-sam is suddenly bitten by the guard dog, prompting Jong-gu to rush over to help him. The situation quickly grows worse when the dog's chain breaks loose and it begins chasing them. Jong-gu and Yi-sam struggle to hold the door shut to keep the animal from getting inside, while Sung-bak remains too shocked by his discovery in the secret room to be of much help. Fortunately, the dog suddenly stops attacking when its owner finally returns. Sato's arrival creates an awkward situation because Jong-gu and the others have clearly entered his home without permission. Meanwhile, Sung-bak, who is now more convinced than ever that Sato is connected to the village's horrific events, can only remain silent. Even stranger, Sato seems fully aware that they have searched his house, including the hidden room filled with photographs. Yet he shows no anger and offers no explanation whatsoever. On the way home, Jong-gu notices that Sung-bak remains unusually quiet throughout the trip. Eventually, Sung-bak reveals what has been on his mind. He believes Sato is responsible for all the terrible events that have occurred. According to him, the number of victims is not just 2 or 3 people, but dozens. He is also convinced that the personal belongings found in the secret room once belonged to Sato's victims. However, among all those discoveries, one item frightens him more than anything else: a shoe with Hyojin's name written on it. Upon hearing this, Jong-gu immediately returns home and questions his daughter. He asks whether she has ever lost one of her shoes, but Hyojin denies it. Jong-gu then shows her the shoe found in Sato's house. Even though her name is clearly written on it, Hyojin insists it does not belong to her. Sensing that she is hiding something, Jong-gu continues pressing her until she finally admits that she has met Sato before. However, when he asks when and where the meeting happened, Hyojin dismisses the question and claims it is not important. She then suddenly becomes aggressive and starts shouting at Jong-gu, something she has never done before, even when angry. That night, after Hyojin falls asleep, Jong-gu secretly searches through her belongings for clues. Inside her sketchbook, he discovers numerous disturbing drawings that only increase his concern. Driven by curiosity, he also examines Hyojin's body. Around her thigh, he finds skin lesions that look exactly like the disease previously seen on the murderers. However, while he is examining her, Hyojin suddenly wakes up. Seeing her father inspecting her body, she immediately becomes furious. She spends the entire night screaming insults at him.
자는 줄 알았구만.
Mina and Jenny try to calm her down, but Hyojin cannot be controlled. Her behavior begins to resemble that of someone possessed. Witnessing her condition, Jenny finally reveals that she has already consulted a shaman. According to him, an evil spirit has entered Hyojin's body. That is why Jenny has arranged for the shaman to come and examine her granddaughter personally. Meanwhile, Jong-gu meets Yi-sam again and asks him to return to Sato's house. Since Yi-sam speaks Japanese, he once again serves as their translator. Before long, they manage to meet Sato face to face. When questioned, Sato calmly shows his passport as proof that he entered Korea legally. Jong-gu then enters the house and notices Sato eating chicken feet. Taking advantage of the opportunity, he re-examines the secret room that Sung-bak discovered earlier. This time, however, all the photographs and suspicious items have vanished. When questioned about them, Sato claims that he burned everything. Jong-gu immediately checks the fireplace and finds evidence that the items were indeed burned recently. This only increases his suspicion that Sato is destroying evidence. Jong-gu continues interrogating him, asking why he came to the village in the first place. Sato simply replies that he came for sightseeing. Naturally, Jong-gu does not believe him. When asked about Hyojin's shoe found inside the house, Sato remains silent and refuses to answer. His calm attitude only makes Jong-gu angrier. Feeling that Sato is mocking him, Jong-gu begins smashing various objects throughout the house, especially the ritual items that remain. In the middle of the chaos, Sato's dog attacks him once again. This time, however, Jong-gu fights back and kills the animal. Afterward, he gives Sato a final warning, telling him to leave the village within 3 days. If he stays any longer, terrible things will happen to him. Meanwhile, Mina takes Hyojin to a doctor because her skin condition continues to worsen. What started as a few lesions has now begun spreading rapidly across her body. That evening, Mina tells Jong-gu the results of the examination. Hyojin is suffering from the exact same skin disease that afflicted the previous murderers. Even more alarming, the doctors have no idea what causes it or how to treat it. For now, there is absolutely nothing they can do medically to stop her condition from progressing. The following day, chaos strikes Jong-gu's household once again. Mina suddenly lets out a terrified scream after discovering the carcass of a sheep hanging directly in front of their house. Hearing her scream, Jong-gu immediately panics, but strangely, his body feels weak and he can barely move. Because of his unusual condition, he is eventually taken to a traditional healer for acupuncture treatment. After examining him, the healer assures him that his condition is not serious and that he simply needs proper rest to recover. While there, Jong-gu asks about Hyojin's whereabouts. He is told that while he was away receiving treatment, Hyojin had been left at home under the care of a neighbor. The moment he hears this, Jong-gu becomes uneasy. Considering everything that has been happening to his daughter, he feels that leaving Hyojin with someone else is a terrible idea. Unfortunately, his fears prove to be justified. When they return home, Hyojin suddenly loses control and stabs the woman who was looking after her in the stomach. Immediately afterward, Hyojin breaks down in tears, appearing just as shocked as everyone else by what she has done. Fortunately, Jong-gu arrives home in time, and the victim is rushed for help before it is too late. The incident pushes Jong-gu even deeper into despair. Meanwhile, Sungbak admits that ever since returning from Sato's house, he has been plagued by relentless nightmares that leave him unable to find peace. In his opinion, if they do not take action soon, something even worse will eventually happen to all of them. Because Hyojin's condition continues to deteriorate, a shaman named Il-gwang arrives at Jong-gu's house the following day. The moment he sees Hyojin, he senses that something is terribly wrong. Looking into her eyes, Il-gwang sees an overwhelming hatred, as if some unseen force has taken control of her. He then begins searching around the house for clues. His attention eventually settles on a large storage jar in the yard. Jenny explains that it contains nothing more than cooking ingredients, but Il-gwang insists on having it brought to him anyway. When the jar is broken open, everyone is horrified to discover the decaying carcass of a crow hidden inside. The discovery convinces Il-gwang even further that Hyojin is under the influence of an evil force. Without wasting any time, he begins a ritual to drive the spirit out. Throughout the ceremony, Hyojin screams in agony, while Jong-gu can do nothing except watch helplessly. After Hyojin finally falls asleep, Il-gwang continues the ritual and begins questioning Jong-gu. He asks whether Hyojin has recently encountered someone she should never have met. Jong-gu does not understand the question and remains silent. Il-gwang then changes his approach and asks whether Jong-gu has recently had a serious conflict with anyone. Jong-gu admits that he has been having problems with a man named Sato. Upon hearing the name, Il-gwang immediately shares his opinion. According to him, Sato is not an ordinary human being, but an extremely powerful spirit. In fact, among all the supernatural entities he has ever encountered, Sato is one of the most dangerous. At the same time, another murder case shocks the village. Police discover a family that has been attacked, and 2 bodies are found inside a well. Based on the initial investigation, the husband is believed to be the killer. However, his whereabouts remain unknown. Meanwhile, Il-gwang takes Jong-gu to his home to discuss how they can save Hyojin. There he explains that he plans to perform a major ritual the following night in order to destroy Sato. However, the ceremony will be extremely expensive, costing around 10 million won. Despite the enormous price, Jong-gu agrees without hesitation if it means saving his daughter. Before they part ways, Il-gwang gives him one important warning. No matter what happens during the ritual, Jong-gu must not stop it. Shortly afterward, Il-gwang changes clothes. At that moment, Jong-gu notices something unusual. Il-gwang is wearing underwear that looks remarkably similar to the kind Sato has been seen wearing. Curious, Jong-gu asks once again why Il-gwang is so certain that Sato is a spirit when he appears to be an ordinary man. Il-gwang explains that Sato may once have been human, but he is no longer human now. According to him, Sato has transformed into something far more terrifying. Among all the spirits he has encountered, Sato is the strongest and the most evil. Jong-gu then asks why Sato targeted Hyojin. Il-gwang explains that Sato does not choose his victims personally. He simply casts out bait, and Hyojin happened to be the one who took it. In other words, anyone could have become the next victim. Elsewhere, Sato is seen approaching a car parked in an isolated area. Inside is the body of the man believed to have murdered the family whose victims were found in the well. Judging from his clothing, the man is identified as Chunbei, and he appears to have been dead for some time. The following day, Sato visits a market and purchases several chickens. Afterward, he travels to a waterfall and meditates beneath the rushing water, wearing nothing but his underwear. Unbeknownst to him, Shiro watches everything from a distance. As evening approaches, Sato begins preparing a ritual. He arranges an altar, places a photograph of Chunbei on it, and hangs the chickens he purchased earlier. As soon as the sun sets, the ritual begins. At the exact same time, Il-gwang starts his own ceremony with the goal of killing Sato. Unlike Sato, who performs his ritual alone in complete silence, Il-gwang's ritual is loud, intense, and filled with dramatic energy. The moment the ceremony begins, Hyojin's condition rapidly worsens. She becomes restless and suffers immense pain. However, Jong-gu remembers Il-gwang's warning that the ritual must not be interrupted under any circumstances. What Jong-gu does not realize is that Sato's ritual is not targeting Hyojin at all. Its true target is the body of Chunbei. Il-gwang's ritual reaches its climax when he begins driving large nails into a wooden effigy. Every time a nail is hammered in, Hyojin experiences unbearable agony. Strangely, Sato also appears to be suffering at the same time. His ritual is disrupted, and he is forced to crawl into another room before eventually collapsing and becoming motionless. Watching his daughter convulse and scream in pain, Jong-gu begins to lose faith. Hyojin's condition reminds him of the patients he previously saw losing control before dying. She repeatedly begs him to stop the ritual. In the end, fear overwhelms him, and Jong-gu decides to interrupt Il-gwang's ceremony and drive everyone away. Not long after the ritual is stopped, Sato regains consciousness. His body trembles violently as though he has narrowly escaped death. He sees Shiro watching him from afar. Meanwhile, Jong-gu rushes Hyojin to the hospital. During the examination, she remains unconscious, and her body is twisted into an unnatural position. By coincidence, Yi-sam is also at the hospital and feels sorry for the young girl. He believes that Jong-gu should seek help from the church before it is too late. Having run out of options, Jong-gu eventually goes to speak with a priest. Unfortunately, the priest cannot offer much assistance. He only shares various rumors he has heard about Sato. Some people claim that Sato was once a professor, while others insist that he used to be a monk. However, none of these stories have ever been proven true. Furthermore, because Hyojin is not a member of the church, they have no authority to become directly involved. After leaving the church, Jong-gu meets with Yi-sam once again. By now, he no longer cares about anyone else's explanations. In his mind, there is only one way to end the nightmare consuming his family. He decides to confront Sato one last time and, if necessary, kill him himself to discover whether Sato is truly human or something far more evil. After sunrise, Jong-gu and Yi-sam meet up with several of Jong-gu's friends whom he has gathered for help. Jong-gu tells them everything that has happened to his family and asks for their assistance in finding Sato. Without hesitation, they agree and arm themselves with several weapons before heading towards Sato's house. However, when they arrive, they discover that the house is empty. Sato is no longer there.
너 뭐 두고 섰냐?
At the same time, Sato is on the other side of the mountain. He returns to the vehicle where Chunbei's body had previously been found, but when he checks inside, he discovers that the corpse has disappeared. Meanwhile, back at Sato's house, Jong-gu begins searching the ritual room they discovered earlier. There, he finds a photograph of Chunbei, who appears to be Sato's latest target. Not long afterward, one of Jong-gu's friends notices something suspicious outside and quickly calls the others over. To their horror, they find Chunbei standing there in a grotesque condition. He moves like a living corpse and shows no reaction to anything they say. Even after being told to stop, Chunbei continues approaching them, forcing several of the men to beat him in self-defense. Seeing this, Yi-sam feels sorry for him and tries to stop the attack. Unfortunately, his compassion immediately backfires. Chunbei lunges at him and bites deeply into his cheek, tearing the flesh. Jong-gu grabs a rock and smashes it against Chunbei's head, but even the powerful blow fails to stop him. Unbeknownst to them, Sato is watching everything from a distance without interfering. The situation grows increasingly chaotic because no one can restrain Chunbei. Then, without warning, his body begins convulsing violently before he suddenly collapses and dies on the spot. Seeing Chunbei's condition reminds Jong-gu of Hyojin, who has been showing similar symptoms. In the middle of the chaos, Yi-sam spots Sato observing them from afar. The moment Sato realizes he has been seen, he immediately flees, prompting Jong-gu and the others to chase after him. During his escape, Sato tumbles down a steep slope and disappears from sight. Not long afterward, Jong-gu and the others reach a dead end where a massive cliff blocks their path. They search everywhere but cannot find Sato. Exhausted and having lost his trail, they begin wondering what to do next. Unknown to them, Sato is actually hiding directly below, hanging onto the side of the cliff. That is why he remains unseen throughout their search. Eventually, he loses his grip and falls. One of Jong-gu's friends hears the sound of the fall, but when they look down into the ravine, they cannot find anyone. Below, Sato lies on the ground, crying in pain. Not far from where he landed, he once again sees Shiro standing silently in the distance. Just like before, the mysterious woman simply watches him without doing anything. Since they fail to locate Sato, Jong-gu and his friends eventually decide to return home. During the drive back, Jong-gu cannot stop thinking about Hyojin and repeatedly tries calling Mina, but she does not answer. Distracted by worry, he nearly causes an accident. Fortunately, he manages to regain control of the vehicle. Moments later, however, something suddenly falls from above and crashes into their car. When they get out to investigate, they are shocked to discover that the person who hit their vehicle is Sato himself. No one can understand how Sato suddenly fell from above and appeared right in front of them, but Jong-gu no longer cares. His goal from the beginning was to find Sato and kill him, and now he believes the job is finally done. Even though they know what they are doing is illegal, they decide to throw Sato's body into a ravine to cover their tracks. Unaware of it, Shiro once again witnesses everything from a distance. Afterward, Jong-gu heads straight to the hospital to see Hyojin. The moment he sees that she is still alive, he feels overwhelming relief. Hyojin hugs her father tightly, and for the first time in days, Jong-gu begins to believe that Sato's death has ended the nightmare haunting his family. That evening, Hyojin is even allowed to return home, although she is not fully recovered. At the same time, Il-gwang repeatedly tries to contact Jong-gu, but every call is ignored. Meanwhile, Yi-sam remains at the hospital receiving treatment for the wound Chunbei inflicted on his cheek. Not long afterward, Jong-gu receives a phone call and immediately leaves. It turns out that Sungbak has become the latest victim of Sato's influence and has just killed someone, prompting Jong-gu to rush to the scene. Elsewhere, Il-gwang arrives near Jong-gu's house. Before reaching it, however, he suddenly begins suffering from a severe nosebleed. From a nearby building, he notices Shiro staring at him and asking why he has come there. Moments later, Il-gwang begins vomiting uncontrollably. Terrified, he immediately flees the area as fast as possible. Meanwhile, Jong-gu is unable to sleep. He notices numerous missed calls from Il-gwang and starts worrying that something may have happened. He tries calling back, but no one answers. At that moment, Il-gwang is already back at his own home, performing a protective ritual. However, the ritual does not go as planned. No matter how hard he tries, he cannot get his candles to light. Soon afterward, a crow suddenly flies into the house, making him even more frightened. Since Il-gwang remains unreachable, Jong-gu decides to visit his house personally. But when he arrives, the place is completely empty, and all of Il-gwang's belongings are gone. It turns out that Il-gwang is so terrified of Shiro that he has decided to leave the village altogether. While driving away, a swarm of insects suddenly appears and blocks his vision, nearly causing a serious accident. Yet when he steps out of the vehicle to investigate, he cannot find a single insect anywhere. At that moment, Il-gwang realizes that the insects were merely an illusion. He interprets the experience as a warning not to leave the village. As a result, he turns around and immediately contacts Jong-gu. During the call, Il-gwang confesses that he has made a terrible mistake. According to him, the one who has truly been attacking Hyojin is not Sato, but Shiro. Il-gwang then explains that Sato is actually a shaman like himself who came to the village to hunt down Shiro and protect the villagers from her. Hearing this revelation, Jong-gu panics and rushes home. Meanwhile, Yi-sam conducts an investigation of his own. Carrying a sickle for protection, he returns to Sato's now abandoned house. He searches for clues that may have been overlooked before. While exploring the area around the house, he notices a strange light glowing in the distance. Curious, Yi-sam follows the light until he discovers a cave hidden behind a closed entrance. After stepping inside, he realizes that the mysterious light is coming from deep within the cave. Elsewhere, Jong-gu finally arrives home. However, the moment he gets there, he cannot find Hyojin anywhere. Panic immediately sets in as he searches every room in the house before running through the village looking for his daughter. His search leads nowhere, but instead he encounters Shiro. Jong-gu immediately demands to know where Hyojin is, but Shiro refuses to answer. Instead, she once again insists that Sato is a ghost. Having already heard too many conflicting stories, Jong-gu no longer believes her. He continues pressing her and asks about Hyojin's whereabouts again. This time, Shiro tells him that Hyojin is actually at home. However, despite saying that, she warns him not to return there yet. According to Shiro, if Jong-gu goes home before the right time, his entire family will die. She explains that Sato is currently waiting for Jong-gu to return because the moment he goes back home, his entire family will die. Naturally, Jong-gu refuses to believe her. He insists that Sato is already dead because he saw it with his own eyes. But Shiro disagrees and tells him that Sato is not something that can die so easily. Meanwhile, Yi-sam finally reaches the deepest part of the cave and investigates the source of the mysterious light. To his shock, the figure sitting there is none other than Sato. Seeing the man who should already be dead sitting right in front of him, Yi-sam begins questioning what Sato really is. Instead of answering, Sato asks Yi-sam what he believes him to be. After a moment, Yi-sam replies that he believes Sato is a demon. Strangely, Sato does not deny the accusation. He simply smiles and says that no matter what explanation he gives, Yi-sam will never believe him anyway. Yi-sam responds by saying that if Sato truly is not a demon, then all he has to do is tell the truth, and Yi-sam will leave without doing anything. Hearing that, Sato bursts into laughter. He tells Yi-sam that he is far too confident if he thinks he is leaving that place alive. Back with Jong-gu, the situation becomes even more confusing. Shiro continues urging him to stay where he is and not return home yet. She explains that she has prepared a trap for Sato. If the trap succeeds, a rooster will crow 3 times. Only after the 3rd crow can Jong-gu safely return home. The problem is that at the very same moment, Il-gwang calls him and delivers the exact opposite warning. He tells Jong-gu to go home immediately and not trust Shiro under any circumstances. Jong-gu now finds himself trapped between 2 completely conflicting stories. On one side, Shiro claims that Il-gwang is working together with Sato. On the other side, Il-gwang insists that Shiro is the true mastermind behind everything that has happened to Hyojin. Neither of them can provide proof convincing enough to settle the matter. All Jong-gu can do is stand there in confusion, desperately trying to decide who is telling the truth. As time passes, the rooster crows for the 2nd time. That means Jong-gu only needs to wait for 1 more crow. However, the longer he waits, the more anxious he becomes. His thoughts constantly drift back to Hyojin and her condition at home. Shiro tries to calm him down and begs him to be patient a little longer. But then, Jong-gu notices something strange. He sees one of Hyojin's hair clips lying on the ground near Shiro. Not only that, he realizes that Shiro is wearing the same cardigan that belonged to the woman he saw at the restaurant. His memory then flashes back to the first time he met Shiro when she was wearing clothes that belonged to Chunbei. Jong-gu becomes convinced that Shiro has been collecting belongings from the victims all along. That suspicion leads him to believe that she is the true source of all the terrible events that have happened. Ignoring Shiro's warnings, Jong-gu immediately runs back toward his house. As he passes the trap that Shiro set up, the plants hanging from it suddenly wither and die. However, Jong-gu pays no attention. The only thing on his mind is Hyojin. He keeps running until he finally reaches home. Inside the kitchen, he is horrified to discover that Hyojin has just killed Mina and Jenny. The moment he sees the two people he loves most lying lifeless on the floor, Jong-gu realizes that he has made the wrong choice. From a distance, Shiro hears Jong-gu's cries of grief, but by then there is nothing she can do to stop the tragedy. It also reveals the reason why Shiro was often seen carrying belongings that belonged to people connected to the curse. It seems that Shiro already knew who would become victims and who would become the next targets, which is why she was often seen with their personal belongings. Unfortunately, Jong-gu misunderstood this and became convinced that Shiro was responsible for everything. Meanwhile, inside the cave, Sato continues speaking to Yi-sam. He challenges Yi-sam to touch his hand, claiming that ghosts do not possess flesh and bones like humans do. After that, Sato takes out his camera and photographs Yi-sam. Moments later, he reveals his true form. At that moment, it becomes clear that Sato is indeed a demon. Yi-sam is so terrified that he cannot even move. And of course, Sato has no intention of letting him leave alive. Time passes until the following morning. Il-gwang arrives at Jong-gu's house and shows no surprise when he sees Hyojin sitting silently outside. Hyojin is still alive, but she has entered the same state as the previous murderers, sitting motionless without any expression. Il-gwang ignores her and walks into the house. Inside, he photographs Jong-gu and the rest of the family, who now lie dead. As he returns to his vehicle, a box accidentally falls from his hands. Dozens of photographs spill out onto the ground, and they look remarkably similar to the collection of photographs found in Sato's secret room. At that moment, everything finally becomes clear. Il-gwang has been working together with Sato all along. However, the story is not quite over yet. In the final scene, Sato is seen waiting for someone to pick him up. While waiting, he notices a family nearby and tries to offer a piece of candy to their young daughter. Fortunately, her parents stop her before she can accept it. Not long afterward, Il-gwang arrives and picks Sato up. The two then leave together, revealing that they intend to leave the village behind and search for new victims elsewhere. From a distance, Shiro can only watch them depart. It is revealed that Shiro is not an ordinary human, but a guardian spirit who has been protecting the village from Sato's evil influence all along. This also explains why she often appeared mysteriously and seemed to know things that no ordinary person could possibly know. Although the terror in this village has finally come to an end, the evil brought by Sato and Il-gwang appears destined to continue elsewhere. And with that, the film comes to an end.